My time with Windbound was terribly frustrating in the beginning, terribly enjoyable through the middle, and terribly frustrating by the end. I was attracted to this game for the colorful, minimalist art style that clearly comes from a Journey-inspired lineage. Rather than braving a lonely desert with an anonymous friend, Windbound braves a treacherous ocean and islands teeming with hostile life. Windbound has taken inspiration from many different games, in fact, and achieved something quite unique. And I want to try to break those things down to let you know what I think worked and what I think didn't. First, Windbound's gameplay feel. Windbound is a very simplified precision action game. This means, yes, it is like Dark Souls. The patterns of both the enemy's attacks and your own are very simple. For most of the enemies, specters and animals included, you will 1. Figure out the right defensive option, parry or dodge, 2. Respond with your own attack, 3. Bait the enemy, and repeat. Enemies each have their own gimmicks. While stiff controls make enemies difficult to learn, once you do, the combat becomes much easier. However, health and stamina come at a premium. You are likely to die quickly to anything if you don't respond quickly. For animal enemies, using the ranged combat is often faster and easier. Post up on a rock, a stump, or your own boat. Take a shot, and then follow them for a safe fight, or, win or lose, go one-on-one melee for a fast fight. I liked this aspect of the gameplay because it felt true to what being a hunter-gatherer would actually be like. Using a bow, a spear, or a slingshot, you would hit an animal, and as it ran away, you would slowly follow it as a human, following its tracks, listening for it, and then doing the same until you eventually kill the animal. And though that kind of combat was interesting, it also wore on itself after a while, and I resorted to just using one-on-one melee, simply because I had crafted weapons that were better. Every stage concludes with a boss fight. They are typically stronger versions of specters you are likely to encounter on islands. Beyond that, most of your game time will be spent on the other 2 pillars of the gameplay, the first of which being Windbound's crafting and sailing. Sailing across the ocean is the hallmark of this game. Bright colors, dynamic changing weather conditions, and dodging the rocks and coral make this game feel like no other sailing you have experienced in a game. Nothing has done it quite like this since The Legend of Zelda Wind Waker. The feeling of sailing is driven by a very bold design choice. It's physics-based. The shape, size, weight, and sail placement on your boat dynamically integrate with the wind and the waves to determine how it feels to control your boat. You can build for speed or for sturdiness, but every decision comes with its own emergent advantages and disadvantages. Sailing with the wind is the most exciting, of course, but if your playthrough goes anything like mine, you will more often have to sail diagonally against the wind to make progress. This was the most frustrating part of the game. Even as I refined my boat design, it would still grind to a halt right in the middle of shark-infested waters. Crafting, on the other hand, while slow to start, becomes intuitive after about an hour. Collecting, hoarding, and organizing your materials will be constant and necessary, always keeping exactly what you need, but not more than you are willing to lose. If you are playing on either of the roguelike difficulty settings, abandon the idea of saving that one unique item that you are uncertain how to use. The crafting also reveals the inspiration of Zelda Breath of the Wild in this game. Weapons and items break quickly with use, however, different from Breath of the Wild, not having the materials on hand means waiting a good amount of time before you can make a new one, while having backups clogs your precious inventory space. I would also mention that the glider you can make in the game is also clearly a Breath of the Wild inspiration. All in all, I would say, because of the sheer amount of time it takes to craft new weapons and how quickly your weapons break, it does not have the same quick turnaround that Breath of the Wild did that made gathering weapons, that made the durability system for the weapons at least manageable, if not enjoyable for some people. I would also be remiss if I failed to mention that in the last 2 stages, I frequently encountered a nearly game-breaking bug while playing on the PlayStation 4. Anytime I was quickly switching between either the graphic user interface menus or between melee and ranged combat, controls would simply stop functioning. Menus would no longer appear. The only way to reset was to close the game and restart entirely. Thankfully, this never caused me to lose progress. It only occurred in a combat once, and in that case, though my character died and stopped moving, the game neither saved nor reloaded the level, only a few minutes of lost time. However, because of the crafting system, I will frequently be switching between the menus and testing out the combat of the various items that I made, and so I ran into this bug quite often, and it was extremely frustrating. Probably the single most frustrating thing that plagued the later half of my experience outside of wind conditions being right in the middle of shark-infested waters such that I would stop moving and just lose. The third pillar of Windbound's design is the roguelike aspects of the game. The average playtime for a single loop of Windbound is about 2 to 4 hours. That's frankly far too long for my tastes. This is a crafting game, meaning it actively demands that you save up materials in case you need them in an unforeseen circumstance. The procedurally generated islands with different biomes guarantees that you will be constantly in unforeseen circumstances. However, losing your boat and your items is most often not the result of making a mistake. It is a guaranteed pillar of the design. The roguelite aspects of Windbound come from being able to trade in the game's currency, a non-premium magic crystal called sea shards, for equipment or passive abilities. Each item I found either replaced a weapon or extended the utility of an item, or extended my chances to complete a stage by increasing stats or giving me one do-over. While often useful in the short term, they did not drastically change how the game is played. The core experience is the same regardless. I believe that this game is far too slow-paced to view it primarily as a roguelike adventure. Unless you have bountiful free time, a particular love for roguelike games, I very much recommend playing on the easiest difficulty. This, unfortunately, also reduces the numerical difficulty of combat, resulting in some anticlimactic boss fights. My personal preference is for games that decouple numerical difficulty with changes in the mechanical experience of the game, though typically you see this in the other direction, such as God of War on the PlayStation 4 having enemy attack patterns that are only available at higher difficulties, or Fallout 4 only including survival game systems on the hardest difficulty. Now on to the thing that I loved most about this game. Before leaving this analysis, I really want to focus on something that not any reviewer I follow found fit to mention. The music of this game is amazing, but for a far greater reason than you expect. The music itself is emergent. While the game absolutely has an original soundtrack that guides the calm, danger, and grand feelings of adventure, this is not where the game's music shines. Rather, it is in the animals you hunt throughout the game. Each animal has a unique rhythmic sound effect that can overlap as distinct tracks. These tracks then also overlap with the base combat music. This resulted in each combat taking on a unique level that makes your emotions swell as the music swells in complexity. This means that even without seeing what enemy is attacking you, the sound alone gives you complete situational awareness. Every combat felt unique because of the different enemies that were randomly paired together by the game's roguelike procedurally generated elements. Every fight had a unique procedurally generated song, and nothing in my experience has created music in this way. It greatly enhanced my enjoyment of the game. Overall, this game is a great and unique experience. It has a vision, and it executes on that vision without compromise. And I would say that overall, it is worth any frustration that you deal with to reach the end. So give it a try. Don't forget to like the video, subscribe to the channel, hit the notification bell. Thank you so much for watching, and remember, Windbound is a beautiful game where the player gets to build a boat, sail the pristine blue oceans, frolic with adorable wildlife, and confront the realities of death and genocide. Part 1. Stacking Stones. All life consumes to survive. It is an often uncomfortable truth to face in a modern society where so many of us are far removed from the process of raising and killing plants and animals for food. Many cultures to this day understand this necessity as a matter of spirituality. The interconnections of the world were balanced by rituals, ceremonial preparations of an animal carcass to thank it for its sacrifice, specific rules for cooking, prayers to gods to thank them for the gift of food. We venerated venison, we exalted the apple. These rituals were also used to give balance to people's lives when struck with tragedy. One such ritual was stacking stones. In Buddhism, for a soul to pass from death to the afterlife, they must swim across the Sanzu River in 3 places, using their experience to make it across, but weighed down by their misdeeds. However, when a child dies, they lack the experience necessary to swim. Instead, they must stack river pebbles to climb their way to heaven, a task taken up by the Bodhisattva Jizo and thwarted by an evil hag called Datsueba. Understandably, parents in mourning took it upon themselves to stack river stones for their child, guiding their child to heaven as a final act of parenthood. When I saw the stacked river stones on the altar at the end of the first stage of Windbound, I knew that this beautiful, peaceful game was about death. Part 2. Corruption and Kegare. The story of Windbound is quite explicitly inspired by that game company's journey. Upon successfully completing each stage, a mural is revealed that wordlessly communicated the world's history. A peaceful age of religious fishermen defined by reverence to a giant nautilus, the discovery of magic through the use of nautilus bodies, an age of hubris defined by hunting and controlling the culture's former gods. Finally, as punishment, the sailors' society was trapped in a purgatory of endless oceans. This is where we find ourselves, our ancestors slaughtering an entire species of holy animals, a sailor on the path to redemption from our culture's sins. We encounter other remnants of the culture, echoes of memories that both explain what they did and defend why they did it, clearly unwilling to repent their actions. The magic of the game is shown to be a specific kind of corruption also inspired by traditional Japanese spirituality, Kegare, an impurity that happens both as a result of natural forces in the world, but also from the immoral thoughts and actions of people. Kegare corrupts the body, the spirit, and the world around us. The game presents Kegare through many different artistic and gameplay design decisions. First, the magic is purple, which, as Rasputin described in his video, The Color of Corruption, How Purple is Used in Video Games, is a visual language used by many developers to indicate evil, which also highlights the connection between purple dyes and harvesting ocean creatures. When damaged by a forsaken enemy or by magic, the player character's max health is reduced until they consume a remedy made from herbs. Some of the islands are covered in purple sludge that fills the air with a purple-hued ash and reaches out to damage the player when they come near. The corrupted islands also show the magic corrupting the wildlife, turning them stronger and more hostile. Even the cute little blinks that otherwise don't attack you become violent. Lastly, there is a witch's robe item that you can acquire from hidden pumpkins that is purple. protects you from death one time, and turns your skin and eyes a light green color when it does. Part 3. Death and Roguelikes. Like many other roguelike games, Windbound takes advantage of the repetitive nature of video game death and weaves it into the story. Like the Buddhist Sanzu River story, your deaths come not from being underleveled, but from a lack of experience in how to survive and cross the ocean. What items do you need to prepare? What boat design is best? How much food do you need? These are your skills as the player that help you progress to the next stage. But the death of the player is not the only death that holds meaning. When I first started playing the game, I had wrongly assumed that this was a gentle exploration game. I had set aside time each evening after work to sail the oceans and explore islands. When the game introduced what I needed to hunt and kill the small animals for food, I was drawn back by the dissonance of the world's beauty with what I was being asked to do. The animals were adorable and musical, but I had to kill them to keep my stamina up and keep sailing. But if you try to stock up on food, plant or animal alike, the item degradation of the crafting system, inspired by Zelda Breath of the Wild, will rot your food rather quickly, encouraging the player to never hunt more than what you need to survive, encouraging the reverence for life and food that characterizes spiritual cultures. Though the rotten food is not without use, in the later stages rotten food is the base ingredient for creating magic potions, and this continues the theme of Kegare, as the magic is formed by mixing rot and disease with the natural world. Part 4. Transmigration. To cross the ocean and escape the Nautilus Purgatory, we collect 3 Nautilus shells and defeat one of the corrupted Forsaken. We must then survive the crossing. We must deftly sail along with the flow of the ocean, lest we be dashed against the stones and drowned. At the end of the game, it is revealed that we have not merely been collecting shells, but the souls of Nautilus children. Like the ritual of stacking stones, earning our redemption by ferrying the souls of children to their mother. Rather than seeking to control the world through consumption and excess, the message of Windbound is about learning to literally flow with the natural cycles of life and death. Our reward? Just as we reunited the Nautilus with her children, we too are reunited with the rest of our people who have learned to do the same. Thank you for watching, my friends. If you enjoyed the video, make sure to hit the like and subscribe button, and also hit the notification bell so that I can see you next time. And real quick, I'm interrupting the video to thank our Dark Roast producer, Noah West, for supporting the channel over on Patreon. Thank you, Noah. And remember, stay true.